All right, guys, we've got a whole smorgasbord of fake rumors to go. I mean, no, not necessarily all fake, but we got a bunch of rumors and discussions to go over with the Nintendo Switch. Instead of splitting it up into multiple different videos to milk you guys silly, I decided to put it all into one video and give my harsh, but in my opinion, fair reality when it comes to leaked rumored specs and all this different Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. Take it from someone who used to drink the Kool-Aid when it came to the Nintendo Switch, the original system, and people leaking stuff and foreign rating boards and all these different type of things. Trust me, guys, a lot of this stuff ends up being fake. So just keep that in mind as we go through some of these different things here. And of course, I'll give my take on how much I believe something or not with each one. So sit down and buckle in. This is going to be interesting. But before we get into that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, click that notification bell. And when do you think the Nintendo Switch 2 will be revealed from Nintendo? Now, let's go ahead and jump right into this. We're going to start off with an article from GameIndustry.biz, and it's from Christopher Dring over there. He does the UK sales as well, and most of it was just talking about how the Nintendo Switch 2 can surpass its predecessor with the Nintendo Switch, and there's a whole big article, so I'll have a link for you guys in the description. But I wanted to focus in on one thing that he said here at the end of the article. He's talking about Nintendo and licensing out their IPs for other developers to use and how he's been hearing about it. So let's get into his comments and then I'll add my 2 cents as someone who's been playing Nintendo games for like 40 years or something like that. So he stated this, quote, "I also know that Nintendo is actively meeting with independent developers to find new partners. Some of that is around publishing indie games, which Nintendo does from time to time, but it's also seeking studios that could work on some of its IP. Nintendo regularly works with third-party teams, including Bandai Namco, Team Ninja, Platinum Games, Mercury Steam, WayForward, and Grezzo, but the company is looking to add to that roster, and I know of 3 studios that are in deep conversation around making games based on Nintendo brands." So it's something that he stated. It's already been happening. We've seen it with Hyrule Warriors. We've seen it with Fire Emblem Warriors. We've seen it with Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. We've seen it with Metroid Dread. We've seen it with so many games out there. Heck, even Super Smash Bros. Is made by Bandai Namco, like he's stating here. So we know that Nintendo does that. He says that he knows of 3 different developers out there. There's definitely other developers that could be in talks here. Maybe there's a Western studio for something like F-Zero. Maybe they have a different studio for something like Golden Sun. So I think that Nintendo has a ton of great IP that aren't most utilized, right? Star Fox, F-Zero, Golden Sun, and others that they just don't use as much. And I think it's pretty obvious that Nintendo, yes, will be working with other third-party companies in order to get games out on this next system. As development cost goes up, as resource pressure goes up, you're going to need some more people in, especially if you don't get all of the third-party support right there at launch or in the middle of the system. You want to have deals set in place so you can be good going forward with exclusive games, and hopefully that boosts up sales and entices more developers to actually put games on the Nintendo Switch 2, because it's not a foregone conclusion that everyone's going to support this system right at the beginning, especially from a Western developer standpoint. Japanese developers almost have no choice. I think Nintendo's going to come out of the gate strong, swinging in Japan, and most of the Japanese developers know they have to put their games on Switch, but I think it's going to be the Western developers that are not all convinced at this point, no matter what the specs are or whatever they do. So I do think that making sure that you have those other games that can come in and entice people and also entice the hardcore audience, I think that's a good idea. Now let's move on to the next thing here, guys, and that is the rumored Nintendo Direct for February. Now this was interesting because at first I was just like, okay, we have a bunch of people that are saying February Nintendo Direct. Well, duh. If you look at Nintendo's list of directs, right, if you look at their years dating all the way back, there are multiple directs that are in February. Nintendo is almost a lock or shoe-in to be a February Direct. So it makes sense that now there are some rumors and there's some things coming out. There's some random people that have came out and tried to leak information or tell information to other content creators, people making videos based off of people with absolutely no track record. So to me, I would say don't listen to those people. Don't listen to all that nonsense. I'm here to give it to you guys for real when it comes down to it. Trust me, I've been in that vortex of trusting these random sources or these random people with no track record. It usually turns out to be wrong, okay? Or people with very spotty track records. So I wouldn't take any of that. But we do have somebody else that's joining into the fray that I do think is accurate most of the time and gets actual information because he's accredited, works for a big website, and that's Jeff Grubb. Jeff Grubb, friend of the show, friend of the Bombcast as well, and he recently talked about the rumored Nintendo Direct, but he seems pretty sure that Nintendo will be having one. But the way that it comes out on the Bombcast podcast that they had, it just seems like he's just saying, hey, look, you know, Nintendo, they're going to have one. Microsoft is having the Developer Direct on January 18th. Sony, he does state that they're going to have a State of Play as well. And Nintendo, they always have February Direct. So I'm going to let you guys listen to it, and then we can talk about it a bit more.
This is the first one of these events that we're getting from one of these companies in 2024. It is the one I heard was coming up the fastest. But you can always count on a Nintendo Direct in February. It's almost certainly going to happen in February again. And then that leaves the question about State of Play. There is a State of Play coming. There's a State of Play coming. When exactly, I'm not sure, but I would expect it in the next few weeks.
Is it going to hurt me, Grub?
It's the State of Plays are always weird, man. Because you always get the sense it's like, oh, these are just contractual obligations. They just told a company, hey, we would give you free marketing, so they have to feel a need that they have to do it. So they could always be very disappointing and hurt you. But is there a specific kind of hurt you're worried about, Jan?
So there you go, guys. From some of the other rumors out there, I do not trust Zippo when it comes down to it, but he's talking about it. And he stated that it's going to be a cleanup show for the Nintendo Switch. We're going to get the release dates for games like Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, in addition to Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, and there's going to be some surprises there. So it's a Nintendo Direct if they're having one, so obviously there's going to be surprises. The one last thing, there's usually a new game being revealed or something very interesting that they're going to show off. So I'm guessing that in this Direct, if we do have one, which I do think that it's a good possibility that we have one, that yes, it's probably going to have like maybe Twilight Princess, Wind Waker. People have been waiting for those games for quite some time. I think that launching them in the same year as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, obviously you might not want to do that because you want everyone to focus on that. But now that we're in the next year here, obviously it'd be a good time to release those. Also Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3. So a lot of remasters, a lot of stuff like that. And maybe we get like one more new game that could eventually be cross-gen or backwards compatible. Maybe they give us the first look at Metroid Prime 4. I think that would be a phenomenal way to end the show. Just say Metroid Prime 4, and you don't even have to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2. You can just simply say Metroid Prime 4, the first look at it. Heck, you don't even have to give us that it's coming to the Nintendo Switch. You don't have to say anything. Just show us Metroid Prime 4. And I think if they do that, that would be a great show. It can be 30 minutes long or 40 minutes long and just have that stuff, clean up some of the other stuff with Princess Peach Showtime and some of those other games that are already dated. Bam, there you go. Nintendo Direct finishing out the generation, and then we can move on to whatever is next. But speaking of whatever's next, let's talk about the recent rumor that's sending everyone into a tizzy online, and that's the supposed specs of the Nintendo Switch 2 that have been leaked by a Taiwanese economic site. Yes, it's correct. According to this new rumor, a Taiwanese economic site. Somehow they have the specs of the Nintendo Switch 2, and apparently they're insiders. And listen, guys, before we go over this, well, no, let's just go ahead and get into it, and then I'll give my own personal thoughts because there's definitely some malarkey here. But anyway, here are the rumored specs. You have an NVIDIA T239 processor, which that's also something that most people are saying is going to happen. 8 gigabytes of RAM, which has definitely caused some concern amongst gamers out there. 64 gigabytes of storage, which absolutely seems like it's not going to be that since the Nintendo Switch OLED already has 64 gigabytes. I'm pretty sure they would increase that. It also says greatly improved, in quotations, battery life And then another one here that's kind of weird, 120 hertz screen refresh rate and a price of $400, which is to be expected. So let's break down each one of these, or why I think that this is just made up. And I think that with these foreign sites and all of that, it's hard because you're using Google Translate, and I think that sometimes speculation and maybes get turned into absolutes with these sites, but we'll talk about it in just a bit because I've been around the block when it comes to covering all this stuff, and this reminds me of a lot of the fake stuff before the Nintendo Switch launch. So I do think that, yes, the T239 processor will be that based off of everything that we've known so far. 8 gigabytes of RAM, definitely on the low side, especially since the Nintendo Switch was 4 gigabytes of RAM. It's something that Nintendo could do. You double it. Obviously, you have newer technology, you have a custom SoC, you have better APIs, you have all these different things. You can make the most of that RAM, especially if the OS is super lightweight. But at the same time, I think that 8 gigabytes might be a little bit too little considering where the Xbox Series S is. It would have been better if it's up there. But once again, I don't believe any of this so far. I don't believe that it's 8 gigabytes of RAM. I don't believe that they even know about that. I think that it's a guess, or maybe it's something that they heard second or third hand. Once again, it's a Taiwanese economic site, and we have no idea of their track record. So that's what makes me say, don't know about this. Also, the 64 gigabytes of storage, I think Nintendo would increase it more than that. Once again, the Nintendo Switch OLED has 64 gigabytes. I would think they'd probably double that, or maybe even more when it comes to flash memory. So that's another reason why I think that this is not true. It wouldn't be the same as the OLED, especially if they're increasing the price. And then the greatly improved battery life, that's also a toss-up. Nintendo has had a little bit of a spotty track record when it comes to battery life at the beginning of any new handheld system in recent memory. The Nintendo 3DS, the battery life was terrible, especially with the 3D slider on. It was definitely not good. Now, if you look, they did optimize it and it got better, but the Nintendo Switch itself, not bad battery life when it comes to it, but people did complain about 3 hours with AAA games, bit more if you're using an indie game or something, depending on what brightness you have it at. Then they made things a bit better with the Nintendo Switch Lite, the Nintendo Switch V2 version, the Nintendo Switch OLED. Those are all better and people were content with that. So could Nintendo have thought of some greatly improved battery situation? Maybe. That might be the case. I don't believe everything there that it's greatly improved over what they already have at this point, especially with the system being stronger. Not so sure about that. Now, this one here, it just makes me scratch my head. 120 hertz screen refresh rate. What's the point of even having 120 hertz? You're not going to get games playing in portal mode at 120 frames per second. I don't think Nintendo's even shooting for that. I don't think developers are even going to shoot for that. That's probably not going to be a thing. Why would they have a screen at that? I have no idea what's going on with that. They didn't even say whether it's an OLED screen. They didn't say whether it's an LCD, mini LED. They didn't even say what it was. So you know the screen refresh rate, but you don't know what type of screen it is. You don't know what the technology is there. Yeah, don't buy it. At least I'm not buying it. Now, let me let you guys know, for those who maybe came in here new, or maybe you don't remember back when I was first covering the original Nintendo Switch in 2015, in 2016, and the rumors and everything. Rumors like this popped up all the time from foreign websites, from other places, and the Western press would take them and run with them. You'd see Reddit threads, you would see all sorts of stuff, you would see verified leakers, you would see people, insiders, all over the globe. All of a sudden, everybody knows everything about the next Nintendo Switch. And pretty much all of it was not true when it comes down to it. Go back and look at my old videos where I talked about the specs of the original Nintendo Switch. Like, literally all of that stuff was false. And because most people don't know what these specs are, and for it to just be casually put on this Taiwanese economic site, no, I'm not buying any of it, whether it's good or bad, whatever you think about it, not buying any of it, because we saw this so much. Now, if it's verified and confirmed to be true, like when Nintendo actually talks about their system, then okay, cool. But the fact that they're missing a lot of information here, and some of this just seems like, no, they're probably not going to do that. I can't sit here and say this is real. To me, it's fake just because it just doesn't really make sense with some of this stuff, whether it's good, like 120 hertz screen refresh rate, or bad, like only 8 gigabytes of RAM. So to me, it's just like, nah, not really believing any of this. And once again, I saw this so much with the original Nintendo Switch, and really, in my opinion, when I cover stuff what I think is actually going to be real or going to happen, it's going to come from people that are verified, that have been there, done that, and got things right before. That's why I'm always a bit more positive, not even a bit more, I'm a lot more positive when it comes to stuff like when Nate the Hate says something, or when it comes to Eurogamer, Digital Foundry, those guys, because they've reported on it on the original Nintendo Switch, and they were right. They were right with the type of system, the new gimmick, they were right with the Tegra X1, they were right with some of the specs that they were talking about. So if Eurogamer, VGC as well, Andy Robinson over there, if they're talking about something when it comes to Nintendo Switch that they've heard from developers, I would trust them, because not only have they been right on their sources before, but they're not going to sit there and clickbait you guys to death and sit there and make up stuff for clout like some of these other places that we have no idea about. So that's what I would caution. That's what I would stress. A lot of people are taking these rumors and running with them. A lot of other content creators taking these rumors and running with them and acting like they're real, and then trying to absolve blame because it's rumor if it ends up being false, because I've seen it before. So for me, I would say, guys, don't believe any of this nonsense. When we see what Eurogamer has to say, if we see what Nintendo has to say, then okay, but I'm not believing random foreign websites with Google Translate and people just making up things when I don't know their track record at all. But that's my opinion. If these were the specs of the Nintendo Switch, I'd be like, all right, okay, those are the specs of the Nintendo Switch. Let's see the games. How good do the games look? How do they run? What third-party support is there? What's happening with the system overall? What about the UI? What about everything else? What about the online experience? There's so much more left to a system than just looking at a paper of specs, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens going forward with this. But what are your thoughts on all these different rumors and the discussion here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out our other Nintendo Switch videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.